Welcome to Monster Chats, presented by Monster VoIP, where we share the tools, methods, and best practices that business leaders use to build new connections, strengthen relationships, and impact sales in organizations of all shapes and sizes. If you have any questions that come up during today's episode, please text them to 424-378-6966. Please welcome the founder of Monster VoIP, your host, Colin Mitchell.
All right, so on today's episode, we're going to be talking with Ray Stasieczko, CEO and founder of and host of End of the Day with Ray. Ray and I are going to be talking about the MPS and MSP reseller space. I'm Colin Mitchell, the host of Monster Chats and the founder of Monster VoIP. Ray's innovative thinking benefits organizations who recognize change is needed and, more importantly, recognize the value of creativity fueled by experiences. The future of the business to business or business to consumer marketplace will require unique collaboration. He understands the importance of collaboration, and he has the imagination to bring uniqueness in delivering it. He believes successful innovation and transformation only happen when an organization's focus is on bringing the future to the present, instead of bringing the past to the future. Ray, welcome to Monster Chats.
Hey, Colin, it's great to be here. How are you doing, first and foremost? You guys safe out there in California?
Absolutely, yeah. Staying safe, staying at home, not taking any risks. It's a crazy world that we're living in today.
Absolutely, and it's probably one of the greatest lessons to understanding the future coming to the present that we'll ever get in our lifetime anyway. And I'm sure even a couple generations behind us.
Yeah. I mean, this is not something that anybody could have predicted, right?
No, they'll argue whether scientists did or not, but at the end of the day, no one builds a business to live through a pandemic. I believe that in the future, we will have, things in place to help us a little easier with the transition. The work from home movement, I don't think is going away anytime soon. And as a matter of fact, once you take that genie out of the bottle, I don't think we're putting it back in. Too many people like it. So, I know in your business, you've been working from home for how long, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, we have a remote team here, and we've been all pretty much working remote for many years successfully. And it's just been the way that we've built our business and built our team. So it was really just business as usual for us. But Ray, tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us where you came from and how you got where you are today.
Well, I came out of the print industry. I guess if I go back a little further, I started in retail as my first career. So I was a grocery store manager for a chain called Winn-Dixie. From there, I went on and did some different things, but I ended up selling for a company called Lanier Worldwide in Tampa, Florida. Put a copier on a coffin cart, we used to call it, throw it in the back of the van and go sell them. And back in those days, of course, people didn't even have them, so it was kind of interesting. From there, I ended up owning a dealership, sold that dealership, bought back into the dealer that bought me, spent about 6 years with him. Sold my interest in that about 7 years ago, did some consulting with some other dealers, and was really looking at the transition from print to IT and how the successful companies were doing that. It was very intriguing to me. I spent a couple of years with a company called ImageQuest LLC out of Nashville, and really learned that space and how the IT services was so much more valuable to a customer than print on its own. Our industry has struggled with that, trying to make transition. We see companies like Marco and a few that have done it very successful. But for the most part, that struggle and that indecisiveness to get into that business will prove to be a fatal mistake for a lot of our friends in the imaging channel as we go through this pandemic today. So, I coined that quote, a company becomes obsolete when they focus on bringing the past to the future instead of the future to the present. And I wrote that actually, Colin, the day that Sears and Kmart announced their merger. And I thought, how stupid is this? You got two people that are living in the past coming together to deliver more of the past. Should Sears have went out and bought a software company, what else could they have done? And, even as we go through this pandemic, and I talk to some of my friends, they still talk about the way it used to be. They still talk about when we exit out of this, we're going to do the same things we were doing. And I'm hoping that the majority of the minds out there in the SMB space realize that the digitalization of the SMB, business has ramped up by 5 or 6 years. I mean, people are doing things today that they kept procrastinating or they put on hold. And I know in your business, voice over IP, it's probably ramping up pretty well. I mean, you probably got a lot of new customers calling you, a lot of new resellers calling you. So, we are definitely in interesting times. They're scary times, but, from fear, I think that forces people to react. And you really can't procrastinate things that are beneficial to you when you're in fear of your life. And I think, the businesses need to be in fear of their life of their business. And hopefully that fear will force them to do things a little different.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people have been forced to do things that they maybe should have been doing that, and were putting off. Right. And a lot of those things are going to stick around even when things go back to, the way they were before we had to stay at home.
Well, I've only speak myself, 59 years old. And I remember when I started using technology, I didn't even start using technology till I was in my 40s. And so, it's funny though, when you do things and you say, holy shit, I'm never going back to the old way. Why the hell didn't I do this 2 or 3 years
Right.
ago? And, a lot of our customers, regardless of what vertical you're in, you're selling IT services, telephony, office products, resellers. I mean, think of our friends in the office products reseller space who have no annuities. They've been out there selling office supplies to end users for their offices. Now they're all at home. How many are going to go back to the office? How many are going to relook at those budgets? How many of those customers started buying from Amazon or, a better, more comfortable experience online? So there's a whole lot of our reseller channels that really have to make some tough decisions going forward. But, hopefully none of them are thinking that they're going to deliver more of the past to the new future. I surely hope not anyway.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how many people that have adopted, obviously without a choice, this, remote working from home, distributed team, and how many companies or organizations might actually prefer that, or when they get back to things, start looking at like the lease of the office space as something that they can maybe cut out of their budget.
Well, oh, absolutely. I think, I was talking to my buddy Milton Bartley a while back, and, I believe that the remote worker will be the new benefit. I believe organizations will hire people, and part of that process will be the interview is going to say, the candidate's going to say, hey, can I work from home? And I think, more and more companies, obviously, they just procrastinated the movement. We knew the work from home was going to happen. I mean, I was writing about this 4 years ago, and we could see the momentum, and we just kind of procrastinated, or it wouldn't, most of the time when an industry sits idle, they don't see themselves in the new future, or they can't comprehend how they can live in that new future. And that's usually what comes and slaps them in the ass when a certain condition happens. We have to all admit that we are in an evolutionary event, and evolutionary events change the landscape forever. I mean, Colin, if you're standing on the ground and there's an earthquake around you, and when the hole opens up, it's never closing again. So you're in a new landscape. And I think that's where we are now. We're in this volcano, the hole's opening. And once this thing stops, we got a whole new landscape, and we have to figure out how to deal in that new landscape. And, hopefully what I bring to the table with my end of the day with Ray helps, drive some of those discussions, because a lot of times the normal way people get information in any environment is built around the comfort of the environment. And we got to change that thinking. We got to talk about painful things, because it's from those talks that can drive us to make changes.
Right. And, businesses are finding, ways to collaborate by not being in the same office space. Right. And maybe the people that thought, hey, working from home is not for me, or, they're finding ways to make that work. And things are not going to go back to the way they were before the pandemic started. There's a lot of things that are going to be different.
Well, it's funny, I was talking to a buddy of mine, he's probably my same age, and he was kind of complaining about trying to work with all the kids. Of course, his kids were college kids that were forced home. And I said, why don't you put them in your damn home office and start talking to them? You probably get more information from those damn young kids that just got out of college than anybody could teach you as far as your peers go. So, make them part of your daily process. I think, and I tell all my friends that, I mean, if you got teenagers or even college kids that are at home with you, make them part of your strategy going forward. Interview them, talk to them. They'll give you a wealth of information. And, don't look at them as your kids. Look at them as a way to the future, because they are the future. I think we should be taking advantage of that wholeheartedly. If anybody watching this, that's the number one thing, Colin, out of this. Talk to those college kids at home with you, and see what they can teach you.
And that brings us to our next point, right? So bringing the future to the present, right? I know that you're a huge advocate of, innovation and looking for new ways of doing things and trying to be ahead of the curve. And you've made some pretty bold predictions within the industries that you play in. And, tell us a little bit about that and how companies can do a better job at being more innovative and thinking more of bringing the future to the present than, hey, let's just keep doing what we've always done.
Well, they got to look in new places, just like talking to the kids, as I just said.
Right.
Most of the time we look in the same place as all of our peers, and we end up missing everything. We all miss the same shit. So we need to learn how to look in different places. We need to ask different questions. And, I always try to look at how things could be based on how they should be. And a lot of times people try to just figure out how things won't work. And, it goes back to the HP Xerox, that whole craziness that's happened over the last 3 or 4 months. Most of the industry kept focusing on how it wouldn't work. And I didn't really care. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's focus on how it could work and how, why it should work, more importantly. And when you start doing that, it prepares you for the reality if it does work. Even now, as Xerox pulls off the table from HP, a lot of people are saying, okay, it's over. Well, it's not over. You can't make a new deal till the old deal goes off the table. So, we got to believe that when this thing's over, that's probably going to get reignited. And maybe HP will have a little bit more open-mindedness going forward. So, I think too many, regardless of what you do, we're so focused on how something totally disruptive to our current circumstances just won't work, instead of looking at how something totally disruptive to our current circumstances will work, or more importantly, could work. Because, those are the way we fight against it. If we want to maintain status quo just a little bit longer, we ought to be able to know what our threats are, and I have one of my quotes out there that if you don't understand and talk about the ways you'll be defeated, you'll be at the mercy of those who plan and execute your defeat. And, a lot of times we procrastinate way too much, and we procrastinate based on maintaining current circumstances just a little bit longer. Well, we all know that pandemics or whatever evolutionary crisis there is can put a real, pressure on that type of thinking. So, like I said, the good that can come out of this, and there's never good when people are dying. But from a societal, impact, hopefully we all learn that technology, if we didn't have the technology that we have today, Colin, could you imagine what we'd be going through? I mean,
No.
If you compare this pandemic to 1918, we have technologies to really kind of pick up and keep on going. There's a lot of things, obviously, we can't do. But more importantly, we have this technology, and the technology is only going to get more innovative. Innovators are looking right now at what's going on, and they're saying, holy shit, we got to make this a better experience. We got to make this world a better experience, just in case it hangs around too long or in case it comes back.
Right. And so what I hear you saying is, like, really companies should be kind of more willing to take a chance on something new than make excuses on why it won't work or procrastinate from doing that, right?
Well, they just get comfortable, and we have a real leadership problem, I believe. And that leadership problem is there's a lot of leaders, especially in a mature industry. If you look at the imaging channel, it's an extremely mature industry, and it's not growing. For the last couple of years, it's had, 5 to 7% declines. And so you have a lot of leadership in there that's just it's very tenure, and their attitudes a lot of time is, well, that it won't happen until I retire, which drives me out of my mind when I hear people say that. Retire now and get the hell out of the way so the young people can, change the industry. But there's a lot of executives. There's a lot of that middle management that won't challenge their leadership, and they all talk about how innovative they are and how disruptive they are. And holy crap, they can't even disrupt themselves. A lot of organizations that built corporate cultures around making everybody feel good, and so when you do that, you obviously won't get anybody that's going to disrupt that environment. And if you can't disrupt yourselves, you're never going to disrupt the environment. So, we just got to change the way we think. It's not, work is not supposed to be a playground. Work is supposed to be a place where you go and try to help end users, deliver it above their expectations. That's really what we're trying to do. And I think we'll learn some lessons, some valuable lessons in this. And, hopefully we'll take those lessons and pay attention to them, act on what they're telling us to do.
Right. So we're going to take a quick second to tell you what we do here at Monster VoIP. We help companies save anywhere from 30 to 50% off their current business phone bill while providing them more value and more features. If you'd like to learn more, you can text us at 424-378-6966. Ray, we're going to wrap this up by talking about how companies can produce successful innovation and transformation. I know we touched on this a little bit, but it sounds like you're telling us like it really starts within the middle management and leadership, and being able to tell us a little bit more about how they can, companies that aren't thinking this way, how they can start to shift their mindset into being more innovative.
Well, you can't create new concepts with old mindsets. And a lot of times we have to look at our human capital component of our business and who are we really bringing in to help us move the needle? When I look inside the imaging channel, are we hiring, sales managers and VPs of sales that came out of the industry, just been rotated around from manufacturer to manufacturer? How many people in our industry at executive level came from places like Amazon or places like Google or places like software manufacturers? We keep going back to what we know. And if we try to innovate, we're trying to innovate in a whole new concept and we're using old mindsets to do, and it's never going to work. And a lot of times, in the smaller businesses, it's really hard, Colin, because they'll always go back to what they know. So if Ray's a leader of a company and he says, by God, we're going to get in e-commerce and I want to know how to do it, I want to be good at it, hire someone that's in that space, bring him into our company and let's move forward. And then as soon as there's a little objection, as soon as there's a little bit of a rock in the pond, then they will, let's not do it. Let's go back to what we know. And that's why the joke in our industry is, the first 20 days of the month we sell solutions, the last 10 days go slam some boxes because that's what we know. That's where we know we get our revenue. And we don't have the patience and we don't have the fortitude to think outside the box. And we can't, it's not about thinking outside the box anymore in my world. I think it's about acting outside the box because we all say we can think out of the box. Well, that's just a damn thought, I mean, I've seen people on LinkedIn, they'll talk about all this crazy shit they're going to do. They can really think out of the box, but they can't execute out of the box.
Right.
And until we can execute out of the box, all we do is we have an incubator of thinkers. That doesn't really help us move the needle. But we really need to bring some human capital into our industry, regardless of what industry that is, outside the industry. And we need to start collaborating with leaders from different mindsets, because then we definitely can create new concepts.
Right. So what it sounds like you're saying is number one, bringing in a fresh perspective, right? Somebody who is maybe from a different industry or has a different thought process that can bring that into the organization. And then also being patient, right? Because change takes time, innovation takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. And really, being committed to that new way of doing things or bringing something new to the end user, and being patient enough to let it happen and not bail as soon as, there's a little speed bump ahead.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, e-commerce is a great example. My buddy Norm McConaughey's big with MPS Toolbox, and, we'll talk to dealers or we'll talk to someone and they'll say, well, I got the e-commerce side, but I hadn't sold anything, a week after it's up. And they don't understand the process or how to drive that business. So, but, you have to be able to understand if what you want to do is being done successfully, the only reason you're not doing it successfully is because you don't have the right people doing it. That's just a common sense. I mean, if we know that Amazon works, if we know that people buy from e-commerce, if we know that people buy cars and all this other stuff, they sure as hell can buy a printer. So if we understand that works, well, the only reason it's not working for us is because we got the wrong people doing it. I mean, it's just logic. Bring in the right people to help you do it. And it's not that the people that are in the space today don't understand e-commerce. Well, they don't. They don't understand it from an executive leadership role. And usually what they're doing is they're taking, VPs of sales and allowing them to drive an e-commerce platform along with the up and down the street platform. It's two different worlds. It's two different leaders. And, how are we going to invest? I'm just going to beat it up. It's the human capital has to be invested in. It's not just about, our current circumstances. And change is forever. I keep saying, I say a lot of the times that it's not, anybody can say we love change. We got change management. Well, quite frankly, in today's world, it's not about change management. That comes too late. It's really about modification management. Can our team modify along the way? And that's why I believe innovative companies kick the ass of legacy organizations, because they're built with two things. They're built with buy-in. All their employees bought in the day they were hired to be innovative and to modify along the way. The legacy players, they just convince themselves that when we have to, we're going to change. And a good example of that is we just had an evolutionary event. How many are even talking about serious changes? I'm talking to guys that are still talking about when they get out of this, how it's going to be exactly the way it was. Yeah, so we have to have the ability. Yeah, we got to modify along the way ahead of change.
Right. And be willing to
do that successfully, we'll win.
Right. And be willing to adapt along the way. Right.
Absolutely.
The path changes as you go down the path of whatever it is new that you're trying to do as an organization, right? Whatever you thought was going to happen ahead isn't always the case, right?
Yep. That's why it takes that human capital from that space that really understands it, because they've already lived through those, evolutionary changes themselves. So they're more apt to be able to do it. The problem, if we do it ourselves, if we try to be totally out of the box ourselves, as soon as we run into a snag, we're going to go back to where we're comfortable. It happens all the time. You can watch it. Hey, we got into IT. We ran into a couple, did some really stupid contracts, had some really bad customers. So we decided just to shut down the whole damn thing and go back and do what we were doing before. And, we can't do that anymore.
And I think something that you said is so important. I just want to make sure that people, didn't miss it, is the company buy-in, right? Which starts at the top, right? If you're going to be an innovative company and be open to change and adapt, the whole organization needs to be on the same page of that, so that when things do change, it's not a surprise and people aren't shocked, right? So the company buy-in, I think, is so important, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of leaders use that as a piss poor excuse to procrastinate. I get so sick of hearing people say, well, I got to get buy-in. We got to do all, they spend so much time trying to get buy-in. That means they don't have job descriptions, number one. If someone tells me that they got to fight for buy-in, they're really bad at writing job descriptions, because their job description, the number one thing on it is we modify along the way to stay constantly relevant. And so you come to work for us, you have to buy in to do that. And, they'll say, well, not everybody's going to be like that. Well, they are like that. And, a leader that jumps out there and says that first thing out of the box, well, I got to get buy-in, is usually a really bad leader in my book. It's easier to blame, because he's basically blaming the team. If you're running around saying you got to get buy-in, you're blaming the team in my world. If you have the right leadership in place, if you have the right drive and aspirations to keep your company relevant, everybody that works there already bought in, and you shouldn't have to fight that. And that's people need to think hard about that.
Wow. All right. Well, Ray, we're just about out of time. Thanks again for your investment, and welcome to the Monster Chats community. Before we wrap it up here, tell us, a little bit, where people can find you. If they wanted to look you up, where would they go?
Well, you can go to my website, just key in endofthedaywithray.com. It'll get you there. You could also key in A4 Revolution. I'm the guy that started that A4 Revolution. So A4Revolution.com. My website's basically a library. So there's about 250 of my videos in that website, and they're all categorized by topics. I also have about 190, 200 articles that are all categorized by topics. So there's a lot of information in there. I don't make you pay to get that information. We do have supporters. If you want to go and be a supporter of the End of the Day with Ray, there's a way you can do that. But, basically, I just want to share information, and I love talking to people like Colin. I mean, we got to talk about things, folks. If we don't talk about them, we're never going to fix them. And once we decide to fix them, then we need to talk even more. So, Colin, I appreciate the time being on your show, and I look forward to coming back, buddy.
Yeah, thanks so much again. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, share. We're listening, and we're open to your feedback. The show is all about you.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Monster Chats, presented by Monster VoIP, where we share the tools, methods, and best practices that business leaders use to build new connections, strengthen relationships, and impact sales in organizations of all shapes and sizes. If you have any questions from today's show and want to reach us directly, please text your question to 424-378-6966.